Things are heating up in GameStop. If you can see up here, after hours, we're getting a little bit of a run. I don't want to be too hyperbolic. This isn't the end of days kind of move, but this is also not an insignificant kind of move. Like I continue to remind you guys, my goal is not to spread hype or FUD. It's to call it as best as I can see it. And you can see it being really active right now after hours. More so than usual. It is hovering right around 29.5. It almost cracked 30. I'm not sure if it actually got above 30 or not. I wasn't following it the entire time, but it was really close. I was actually going to do this video when it broke above 30. And I haven't seen it do it yet, but maybe it will while we're on here, or maybe it already has and it will again. Who knows? But let's talk about what's going on in GameStop. The very first thing I notice is this drift continues and it's accelerating like pretty meaningfully. So we still have this term low on the 1st of July, and we've just been slowly rotating up and out just like this. The other thing that's important to note, take a look at our volume. It's expanding. And today it's now above essentially a 2-week reference range. That's what this is. This is a 2-week average. And you can see we are now tracking up above it, which is not insignificant. And the majority of this is buy volume. 20% of the volume today was sale volume. And yesterday it was a pretty light percentage of sale volume here as well. So there's buying going on. We can see that. We can also see this starting to rotate up. And there's a couple things that kind of line up really well here. I want to, as always, give a shout out to my friend Newton, he does a tremendous amount of work on this thing. And he's like just so well versed on all the background. He and I have been talking, at least touching base most days, just sharing some ideas back and forth. And his sheet is really useful to kind of get an idea of some of these different timing components. And he does a great job keeping this thing up to date with things like XRT volume, with things like FTDs, also with things like tracking creation. And this column here is actually really useful in case you're not paying attention to it, because he's trying to forecast out what the price behavior in GameStop might be like, predicated on all these different forces and cycles. And this is getting really interesting because there's a mix of things going on that I can see from the sheet. I don't want to pretend like I know anything about this anywhere near to the degree that he does. So he's the arbiter of truth. Go watch his stuff about this. It's fantastic. I just follow along with it too because I find it fascinating. And the punchline, as far as I see it right now, is there are some interesting relationships going on with respect to FTD cycles and redemption cycles that seem to be feeding into some of the price activity that we're seeing. Now, getting back closer to my sphere, which is options, here's what we got going on. Huge call volume today. Let me open this up to encapsulate all strikes. You'll see that there's 344,000 calls traded today against 89,500 puts. So massive call skew in terms of OI. I mean, in terms of volume, sorry, to be specific. Actually, I bet you it's in terms of OI as well. Let's take a look. Also in terms of OI, not anywhere near as extreme though, because we're looking at 891,000 calls to 500,000 puts. So it's still a pretty big call skew, but not quite as much in OI as volume. As we take a look across these expirations, the lion's share, this 344,000, lives in this front expiration. This is crazy. 214,500, all for this week. In case you guys didn't know, it's Tuesday. Got a couple days left here, 3 days. It's not necessarily a ton of time. Great. Those short calls are in the money. As I was actually talking to some folks in the Discord, really all we needed was me to offer some short options against my long options in long stocks in order to get the rally. I forgot, right? That's how the market is. No matter what you put on, it'll find a way to make you wrong. So, I mean, honestly, I should apologize to everybody because all I needed to do was to add some short options against the long deltas. And then obviously it would rip my face off. Why wouldn't it? Why wouldn't it do that? And it's doing it. So my bad for not just doing that earlier. I forgot that that's all I needed to do. And the funny part is if I would have just left long options on, we all know this would be a completely different video about how, for whatever reason, GameStop was getting punished to the downside and all my long deltas were worth nothing. You know, that's just how it goes in this business. So anyways, they are in the money. We're going to have to figure that out in a couple of days. That's a future Eric problem. Can't worry about everything at once. Here's what we need to look at. This right here is very topical, very topical. 73,900 open interest at these 30s. 57,647 volume on these. Big volume. If these fall in the money, this gets real interesting real fast. Even this after hours move that we're starting to see gets interesting. The reason why this gets interesting is as these get closer to falling in the money, which they are right now as we're talking, as you can see up here, as these get closer and closer to falling in the money, market makers have to do something with their position to hedge their risk in the event that these are in the money come expiration, because then they're on tap to start delivering shares. So that means that they need to find them somewhere. So if that does start to happen, that likely will lead to some sort of buying pressure on GME. How high does it launch from there? It really depends on how many people scale into this, because there's a lot of weakness after this strike. Like, again, let's just keep it a buck. After the 30s, the 30 and a halves are dry. The 31s are small. The 31 and a halves are dry. The 32s start to offer something, but still not a ton. 33s are light. 34s are light. It doesn't start getting bigger until the 35s. So it would need to find a pretty big breath of fresh air and have enough wind of its back, even if it does fall into the 30s, for all of that buying pressure to move us 5 points from 30 to 35 can happen. Absolutely can happen. Want to be clear about that. But it wouldn't necessarily be quite as simple as this buying volume, if these do fall in the money, immediately means we go there. It probably would require a little bit broader participation and stuff like that. We'll have to see. So the other thing I want to look at super fast is the volatility here. So let me open up all series. We're going to take a look at the implied volatility. We're going to look at the out of the monies as per usual. And interestingly enough, I'm going to kill it to just these two so it's a little less noisy. Notice all these kinks showing up. That happens when there's a big change in volatility, when the market is trying to synthesize new information, new data coming out, new behaviors. You'll see this happen right here. And this is pretty interesting because, again, as I always say, it's tradable. But more importantly than that, as we typically see, the put side is growing pretty massively as per usual. And the call side is expanding, but not quite to the same degree. And from an expiration cycle, these two are popping a lot. This is now broke above 200%. This is broke above 175%. But if I'm not mistaken, looking out to something like the 26th July, these look pretty quiet. Well, the call side has huge implied volatility, but that's not what I was looking at. I wanted to talk about the open interest. Yeah, 77,000 to 28. So they're there, but it's lighter. These OPEX weeks are really important because these are way more liquid. And this is where a lot of activity is going down. And we don't have another big opportunity here until 16 AUG, which is 31 days away from here. If we take a look at the OI for 16 AUG, it's 162K versus 89. So already positions being built there, but not necessarily huge positions just yet. So a lot of volume today, a lot of it centered in the 19 July. People are getting very active out here with like the 19 July 30s. Like I said, 57,000 of those came through today. So if we take a look at these 19 July 32 calls, 3,000 of those came through at 98 cents. Not a massive position, but not an insignificant position to kind of help people see this more clearly. People tend to see this side a little better, which is totally understandable. I get that. Let me get rid of these puts. We're just going to look at the call side coming in at the offer or above. And we can see $571,000 trade came on for the 9 August expiration. So this is a little further out. 16 August still getting hit. October 18th getting hit. 26 July getting hit. So there's a lot of this bigger exposure being added in these further expirations. So as I limit this to this coming expiration cycle, it's not as active, which I find a little interesting, to be honest with you. I would have expected with the price movement we've been seeing the last few days to see more people coming into these near-term expirations, but this also does line up with some of the redemption cycles and the delivery cycles that we've been discussing on the Saturday live streams with Newton, which we have another one this coming Saturday. Don't forget to tune in. It's already up on the channel for you to go check out and set an alert for when it launches. But I would have expected to see more of this in these near-term expirations, but they're all over the place. People are building positions out, which is still, I mean, this is a lot of money here, right? All the way down here is the first cycle that's less than $100,000. So essentially this entire page almost is over $100,000 trades. This is completely different than what we've been seeing lately. Again, like if I go back to the 9th of last week and we take a look there, we had one trade that was 200K, everything else sub 100,000, the vast majority in 30 and 20,000. Who cares about that? You know, just peasant money over there. We active out here on the 16th now, looking at millies being thrown around. Between these two positions right here, you have $1 million. And then you probably have another million and change in this series. So there's money coming into this thing, which is very exciting to watch. Now, a little bit early, I think, to read too far into it because a lot of things need to align in order for this to really start accelerating. But I think a big part that will be useful to see is the redemption cycle coming up and the creation cycle and how that impacts the underlying. We see these building out more. So the 30s out in 16 AUG, 2,400 contracts were added net over yesterday with another 5,800 volume today. Out here at the 40s, there's 12,000 OI, 1,500 added, 3677 volume today. So people are scaling into these positions. Like that's very clear to me. And it's centralized in the standard expiration cycles, 19 July, 16 August. That's where most of this stuff are. As you guys can tell, I tend to put my positions a little further out. I took the 18 Octobers down today because they showed a sizable profit because I went very deep in the money. I had those for a while now. As you can tell, I'm not using the pass-through account for this one, mostly because I wanted to make the joke about this. Hey, we don't like that. These were deeper in the money before. Boo, Wendy. These 29 and a halves need, I want this to be buried. I want these shorts to be so far in the money that they get exercised early and it causes a massive problem for me. That's what I want. Mostly for you guys. It'd be a giant headache for me if those get exercised early. If you're on the other side of those calls, do me a solid. Don't exercise those, please. Just let me close them out if you would be so kind, because I'm not trying to deal with being short GameStop. Short shares on GameStop is, I mean, I have long shares to offset it, but I want those shares. I don't want those to get taken away. So whoever's out there on the other side of these 29s, whoever bought the 29s, just chill. If you would be so kind, let me close this out. And then feel free, go haywire, go crazy, exercise till your heart's content. Just let your boy get out of this. I mean, look, hook a homie up, would you? All right. I am pretty excited. I'm excited to see where this goes. I'm excited to see this after hours movement. It's not insignificant. We need to keep a close eye on things. I see volume expanding. It's difficult to see. This isn't a log chart, so this kind of skews stuff so much. It makes this look really compressed, but it's not. Like if we move into something that's much closer, this is a 5-day, 5-minute chart, just to give a different sense of magnitude. This thing has been running for some time now. So I am eager to see where it goes from here. You can see where my alerts are set to the downside, where I would be reconsidering the position / adjusting my long deltas to make sure I'm not stuck holding. Again, it's different with options. They're decaying assets. So I can't just hold options if the market's going against me, because then I'm just bleeding money everywhere. And that's not the idea, believe it or not, in the business. The idea is to attempt to make money. So that's what we're working towards. Maybe. We'll see. As always, if there's any questions, anything you want me to take a look at, let me know. Be an outlier. I'll see you guys later.